All right, so number 4 objective of a costume designer is to show relationships among characters, separating major characters from minor ones or contrasting one group with another. So this is the Broadway musical Hamilton by Lin-Manuel Miranda. This is not one that Anna worked on, but it's pretty famous. You guys have probably heard of it. I thought this was a great example to show the relationships among the characters and show major characters being separated from minor characters. So the aesthetic in this show that the designer Paul Tazwell decided to go with was that all of the main characters are in full period costumes. So that's hitting one of those objectives of being able to tell where and when we are in time. So it's kind of colonial or not, it's like 1770s America is what it is. For the main characters, they're in bright colors and jewel tones so that we know to keep our eyes on them, that they're the ones carrying the story. The ensemble are in beige and white. I don't know why my pointer has changed to this little dot here. But so the ensemble is in beige and white, kind of a monochromatic, neutral, asexual, and not asexual, like non-gendered look. It's sexy on both, kind of, right? So it's like either for the men a tight vest or for the women a corset. They're all wearing these knickers, which is generally thought of as being a male garment. They're all wearing the white hose or stockings, which in that time period was male or female, was both. So they can dance in the background. They all have freedom of movement to help tell the story, but we know that they are just there to help tell the story, that the story isn't about them. This also allows them to put on a costume piece like a big fancy skirt or something, or a jacket of a certain color, and then they can become, all of a sudden now, they are one of the main characters. So that gives them a lot of flexibility and a lot of versatility for when they need to jump into the story and be someone else, but they can also remain in the background if they need to. So you can tell the difference here. This is a main character with the ensemble behind him, and then these are all main characters right here and there, and then you can see some of these ensemble men in the back. All right, number 5, where appropriate, symbolically convey the significance of individual characters or the theme of the play. So this is Elf the musical. I'm sure you guys are all familiar with Elf the movie, and yes, they did turn it into a musical. This is another one of the shows that Anna has worked on. She, for this one, was also the national tour costume coordinator. So again, all the costumes after the show was done on Broadway. All the paperwork and everything, all of the needs for the show got handed over to Anna, and she took it and ran with it. I think she was this job for 3 years. So the symbolism or the significance of individual characters is shown here because we're all familiar with Buddy the Elf's costume, but the costume designer for the musical chose to use green very sparingly in the rest of the costumes because he wanted to emphasize Buddy. So you'll see, even though they're all in these silly elf costumes, none of them are in green. So Buddy's always going to be the one that we're focusing on, even if we don't realize why it is. We're going to watch a clip from Buddy the musical, and you'll notice that most of the show, no one else wears green in that too. Even when he's the only one in an elf costume in New York City. So that alone, that on its own makes him stand out, but he's also usually the only one wearing green. Objective number 6, you need to meet the needs of the individual performers. So it's not just about how everything looks. It also has to serve all the practical uses that clothing serves. Not only does it have to keep them cool or keep them warm, depending on the needs, there also has to be all of these other objectives, needs that the performers may have. So you have to think about, does the dancer have to be able to move freely and dance? What does that mean? Do they have to stick their leg up and, you know, kick really, really high in a nice batma? Or are they pretty stable or still? And so maybe they don't need to move a lot. So you don't need to worry about the flexibility of the costume. Do they have specific props that are called for in the script? Like, do they have to bring something out of their a mirror out of their pocket and look at themselves? If so, how big is the mirror? So how big does a pocket need to be? Does it need to be hidden? Does it need to be on the jacket? Does it need to be on the pants? All of those things. You have to know, you have to ask the performers if they're allergic to any material. So there are some actors that are allergic to wool or allergic to latex. Latex is used in a lot of different textiles, especially when we're trying to stick things to people like makeup. So you have to be aware of that. So you don't design a costume that has a bunch of wool pieces or some weird prosthetic makeup that has latex in it. Do they have to go through a small doorway on the set? And do you want to design a really huge dress for them, like a big old bell skirt, like this one right here, right? So does she have to fit in that carriage? So the costumes have to physically fit within the space. If they're wearing a crown, is the door going to be too short to let them go through that without, you know, ducking around? And then the big one that costumers think about is quick changes. So we're going to watch some magical quick changes. That's a big, when you are a wardrobe person or a dresser, which is, again, one of Anna's jobs that she does in New York, you are in charge of the quick changes.
Like that. Can you do that? Yes.
Fairy godmother.
Crazy.
All right, number 7, the costume designer's costumes have to be consistent with the production as a whole, especially be consistent with the other visual elements. So it has to go along with everything else that the audience sees. We don't want anything to be weird or out of place or not make sense with the design language of the rest of it. So you're going to need to, if you're a designer, a costume designer, stay in contact with the lighting designer and the set designer and everybody else to make sure you guys are using colors that look good together, shapes that look good together, all those 7 elements of design. You want them to be consistent with one another. If you don't talk, you won't know what the other person is doing, and then they just might not meld, and it might bring the audience out of it and make them not like it. So this is an example. I thought it'd be fun to show a picture from the SpongeBob musical. That's another one. I bet you didn't know it was turned into a musical. It's based off of the cartoon. It's fun and bright. So the costumes are fun and bright and lots of neons and crazy colors and crazy shapes. The set is also, you can't see as much of it here, but made of crazy shapes and silly things. There's a whole bunch of pool noodles. So if you zoom out, there's a whole bunch of just balloons covering the outside of the proscenium arch. Crazy colors and shapes there. And then the lighting, just, you know how we said neon costume lighting? There's also literally neon lights all over the set that light up, and flowers and circles and polka dots. So it's all kooky and zany, but all does the same themes, right? The same color palette, the same types of shapes, the same types of textures. So it's all consistent and it all makes sense. It's all, we're like, okay, great. This is Bikini Bottom. This world makes sense to me. All right, so the process of costume design is similar to the other processes of design. So number one, you have to read the script. You can't design a show if you don't know what it's about and you don't know the characters intimately. In order to get that knowledge, you have to read the script. After you read it, you're going to meet with the director and discuss both of your ideas. So you'll say, okay, I see this person in this color, and this is what I think about them and what I think they should wear. And they might say, oh no, I read that differently. This is my concept. They're going to give you their directorial concept. And see if you guys can meet and make them meld together. They're also going to communicate with you what they want their feelings for the set to be and the lighting design to be, so that you can make sure that on your path you're sticking in those confines. After you've met with the director, you're going to develop some rough sketches in the art world and in the theater world. That's called thumbnails. So they're just little sketches to say, what do you think about this? That way you're not going to spend so much time creating renderings yet that the director might not be like, oh, that's not what I imagined. So sketches, show them the sketches. They'll say yes or they'll say no. You're going to meet with the director again, make sure you're on the same path. Then you'll do sketches or costume renderings of the designs. And then once they say, yes, that's it, I like it, you get to build the costume pieces. In theater, we call it building costumes because it needs to be a lot sturdier than just sewing a regular thing that you can get off the rack at JCPenney. They really have to stand up to a lot. You saw those quick changes. They are ripping those things off and they are dancing and sweating in them. So they have to be really, really sturdy. So the designer is not the one that builds the costumes. They then have a costume shop and a costume shop manager and seamstresses that they will that they will show their renderings to, and everyone else will make those costumes. So this is a process that is different every single time. Every single time there's a different director and designer team and relationship. Every show is going to be different, and that's what's amazing about it, that you can design let's see, Cinderella multiple different times with multiple different directors, and every single time it's going to be different. I mean, unless it's like the Disney Cinderella, but if you're doing the fairy tale Cinderella, there are so many different ways that you can go with each one of those stories, each one of these scripts. So yeah, each time there's a new director or a new designer, it's going to be a completely new experience and a new story, a new version of that story that you're telling. So the costumes are going to set the tone and the style of the play. They're going to tell us the time and the place that we are. It's going to show us the character's status and personality, if they're crazy or if they're an introvert or an extrovert kind of a thing, if they're wealthy or if they're poor. It's going to tell us the relationship between characters. Sometimes characters that are meant to be together will be in the same color or same color palette. Sometimes characters that hate each other will be in opposite colors. Sometimes the character that is the most important will be in red. You're going to create symbolic and non-human characters sometimes. So what does that mean if you have a ghost, like in A Christmas Carol? How are you going to create that non-human character? What's their biggest characteristic? And then how are you going to personify that with a costume? You need to meet the performer's needs, things like they need pockets or they need to change quickly. So maybe instead of having buttons down a shirt, it's going to be magnets. And then you need to maintain consistency. So you're telling the same story as the rest of the designers, but also consistency within each character. Each character is going to have multiple costumes. Think about when you guys went and saw Miracle Worker. There were different versions of Helen, but they were consistent. So you could always tell who she was. The teacher, Annie Sullivan, had multiple different costumes, but I tried to keep them all consistent so that you could tell that this was her character, right? Someone's not going to wear, bright pink and purple and green plaid with, crazy wings and a crown one day and then wear, all muted tones the next day. In theater, usually not. We're going to try to continue that character arc, right? Be consistent so that we know who that character is, and they're going to stay that character. Well, they'll have an arc, but you get what I'm saying. All right, so this is the words that the book say, that the elements that the costume designer works with. but they're working, all the designers work with the 7 elements of design. So we think about texture, we think about color and the lines of the body, because sometimes it's not always about flattering yourself. Usually when you go out and you buy clothes, you want to buy something that looks good on you. The costume designer doesn't think about what looks good on the actual actor or actress or performer. They think about what the character needs to look like. So what kind of lines are going to emphasize the character? What kind of shapes relate to this character, and the colors and the textures? Are they a smooth, sleek person, or are they a rough and tumble kind of guy? Right, so all those 7 elements of design go into thinking about every character. I'll let you guys look at this on your own, but it's the collaborators. Basically, it's the costume designers collaborate with all the other designers and all of the technicians. And then there are these related elements to costume design that sometimes a costume designer is in charge of and sometimes not. So we need these extra elements to finish telling the story and creating these individual characters. So makeup helps to create that character. You know, if you just put someone in a costume, they may not become that character. But the hairstyle matters. You have to be specific. Sometimes that means a wig to help make that hairstyle. Sometimes masks if their face doesn't look right, or if we're doing like a non-human character, or because Shrek is a musical, you know, if you're gonna, maybe if you want to do the donkey in a mask, you might have to include masks to show who the character is. And then special effect things like makeups, prosthetics, you know, crazy noses, pointed ears, etc. So all this is to say you need all of these elements to create a character. And I have an example of myself as Carol Baskin, that damn Carol Baskin. As you can see, so a friend of mine was practicing her makeup, stage makeup, and asked if I would be her model. It's not just the makeup. If I just had on that makeup, you might not be able to tell who I was portraying. But we added a long wig, and we added the headband and the shirt that has the floral and the leopard print on it. All of these things come together, the makeup, the wig, the headband, the costume, to create the character. And so all those things need to be coordinated. A lot of times characters or performers will connect to their character and try to, you know, get into their mindset, but it's the moment they have the costume on and the makeup on, they're like, oh, now I really understand who this is. I've heard that so many times during costume fittings, because they can really see what's in that character's wardrobe, and they can understand and think about, okay, why did this character choose this outfit? What does that say about who they are? And so it helps them really complete that that internalization of the character. It also brings the stage to life. It's a moving element, and so because the people are moving around, it's drawing your focus, and it's bringing you into the acting and the actors. And we keep talking about communication. Costume designers must communicate with the rest of the design team, so the set, lighting, sound, projections, etc., the director, and the performers, to achieve a unified whole that brings the production to a completion. So if the performers aren't on the same page as you, if you see this character as, if you imagine them as being poor, and the actor imagines them as being wealthy, then they're not going to be playing it the same way that you're imagining it, and it's not going to make sense. So you have to communicate with your performers to make sure that you guys are seeing the character the same way, so that you can help complete it for each other. You guys can give each other insight on who that character is, so that you can really create something that meshes and that makes sense psychologically. All right, so yay, we did it. First unit of costuming. There's no homework for this assignment, for this lecture. Well, I guess I'll do a quiz. Sorry, I'll do a quiz just to make sure you watched it. Next class, like I said, April 8th, there's going to be a costuming video assignment to do. And then the assignment for Monday the 13th. Monday the 13th, we're meeting at 10 a.m. to talk to Anna Steinbach. You're going to look at her resume and submit a question before that meeting. Also, your projects, you have a little mini project for every unit in the design area. So your project for costuming is going to be to create your own superhero. So I'll be posting instructions on that. Alrighty, thank you guys so much. Bye.